as soon as AOL came online, I was on those chat rooms in elementary school. And I was like a good, like, straight A student, you know, mama's girl, Christian, the whole bit. And I was on those. I was fucking fishing people as an elementary student. I was the creepy person in those chat rooms. I don't even know what we talked about, but like, yeah, I was in those chat. What the hell was I doing at 8, 9 years old? Like, yes, it is your kid. It's everyone. And it's just something we got to get over. Like, ew, no, morals. I don't want that. Like, nah, get over it. It's a problem. Let's just start dealing with it. There are solutions out there. There are people who have been working in this field for decades. Just get over the moral part. Get over the gross part. Let's get to the recovery part because it's so wonderful. And that's really where my motivation came for doing this, is that I almost killed myself because I thought I was alone. And what saved me is realizing that that's just not the case. And so when I started talking to people about doing this, and especially going online with these videos and everything, they all said, yeah, but what about this? What about your reputation? What about, you know, how people are going to treat you? And all of a sudden I thought, man, that's just not a big enough excuse to let someone else out there feel like they're alone.
It's time for the Share Recovery Podcast, where we bring you amazing life-changing success stories from addicts and alcoholics all over the world who share their inspiring journey in recovery. And now, here's your host,
On today's episode of the Share Podcast, we have Jace Downey joining us. Jace is a sex addict, and she is the founder of Suddenly Celibate. So for all you listeners out there who have sent me emails requesting to broaden the scope of addiction, I'm excited to announce that today we have our very first sex addict, Jace Downey, joining us. It's a great interview. There's a lot of information that we're going to cover about sex addiction. So as to not steal any of Jace's thunder, let's jump right into her episode. But first, a little Share Podcast news. Okay, guys, so the Facebook private accountability group, the Share Podcast private accountability group, just broke 600, which is amazing. We're getting like new members every day. People are posting, people are commenting, people are supporting others who are struggling with their own addictions. It is pretty exciting to watch. If you haven't joined us on the private accountability group, remember, it's Facebook. It's free. Just send me an email, o@thesharepodcast.com. We'll connect on Facebook, and then I'll plug you into the group. And just a quick shout out. Thank you so much to all of our listeners who have continued to send in donations. We are super grateful, and it does help so much. For those of you who would like to donate, go to the website, www.thesharepodcast.com. Top right corner, click on the donate button. It's also on the right-hand side of the navigation bar. You'll see a big yellow donate via PayPal on the right-hand side of the webpage. So for those of you who are looking to donate, again, it's on the website. Also, if you're going to buy some stuff on Amazon, then right next to the PayPal donate button, there is the Amazon button. Click on that. If you're going to buy something on Amazon, click on that first. That also helps finance and support the Share Podcast. You're going to buy some stuff anyway. It's not going to cost you any more money, and it's totally going to help us out. And don't forget to subscribe to the Share Podcast on iTunes or Stitcher Radio, and more importantly, leave us a rating and review. You don't even have to leave a review. You just go over there, click on the 5-star rating, boom, done. We're all set. But if you'd like to leave a rating or review and you don't know how, go to YouTube, type in, how do I leave a rating and review on iTunes? And about 55,000 examples will pop up. There are lots of ways to help support the podcast. You can do it by rating and review on iTunes and Stitcher Radio. You can do it by sending donations. You can do it by clicking on the Amazon button the next time you shop on Amazon. And of course, if you just want to reach out to me and give me some love, just send me an email, o@thesharepodcast.com. Remember to spell share, SHAIR. And also, if you'd like to leave me a voicemail so I can play it on the intro, it's on the right-hand side of the website. You'll see a red button that says leave a voicemail. Feel free to leave me a voicemail. I love getting those, by the way. You guys are awesome. I really, seriously, guys, I can't thank you enough from the bottom of my heart, the amount of love that I get for producing the Share Podcast. I get emails, I get voicemails, I get Facebook PMs. It's overwhelming, and not overwhelming in a bad way. It's overwhelming in a good way. I'm so grateful for my higher power because he's given me the opportunity to produce the Share podcast and connect with just the most amazing people out there. And I wanted to express that. I wanted to express my gratitude to you guys. So now we're going to jump into Jace Downey's story of sex addiction. But first, a quick message from our sponsor. Sober Nation is the largest online recovery community and treatment resource center. They provide treatment resources to those struggling with addiction, as well as to the family members who are caught in the crossfire. On top of that, Sober Nation is a huge community of good people who share their experience with each other. They have informative content, recovery and addiction news, as well as an entire clothing line which helps expand the culture of recovery. They can easily be found at www.sobernation.com. Sober Nation is putting recovery on the map. And finally, would you like to receive the most popular AA daily devotions free in one distribution? Transitions Daily delivers daily devotions from 24 hours a day, AA thought for the day, daily reflections, big book quote, just for today, as Bill sees it, plus more. You can get the daily distribution via email, private Facebook group, or Twitter. Go to dailyaaemails.com for more information. And don't forget to share dailyaaemails.com with friends, in meetings, and with sponsees in recovery. Now back to the show. Hey, Jace, thanks for joining us.
Hey, thanks so much for having me.
I'm very excited to have you on the show today. How you feeling?
Kind of nervous.
You don't seem nervous when you're on your videos out there.
Oh, I am used to pushing through it at this point. You don't have to be comfortable to do something, I figure.
Well, that's what we're doing. We're just going to push through this. So let's get started. All right. So today we have Jace Downey joining us today on the Share podcast. So a few of you listeners have emailed me and said, hey, we really want to broaden the scope here. So can we have some different types of addicts on board? And sex addiction was one of the topics that has come up on multiple emails. So we're definitely going to get started with that. So Jace, before we do, tell us a little bit about how your life is today, your hobbies, exercise. Take us into your normal daily routine, including your recovery.
Yeah, sure. Life right now is kind of an insane blur of busyness between my normal job and the film that we're making, and recovery, of course, playing into that as well. So my hobbies are kind of more work. But when I do break free, I like to dance. I like to blues dance and tango. I got a couple of dogs, so I spend as much time as I can with them. Yeah, my day-to-day is kind of, I get up at about 6 a.m. and I work as an editor and a videographer here in Austin. So I go and do that as kind of my normal job. And then as soon as that is done, work on the film. And right now we're in a big fundraising period for Suddenly Celibate. So that's a whole job in itself, really. And then at some point late at night, I drag myself into bed and get stoked to do it again the next day.
And do you have because I know obviously we're talking about sex addiction. What do you do as far as recovery? Do you have meetings? Do you what is it that you've got going on as far as that's concerned?
Yeah, though it's not quite as old as some of the other 12-step meetings, there are meetings for sex addicts and love addicts and sex and love addicts and kind of anyone who fits into any of those categories. And they follow the same principles. And of course, there are others that are not 12-step oriented that look into sex addiction as well and treating that. I do participate in a couple different 12-step anonymous programs. The recovery is very similar to that of alcoholics or drug addicts, just as the addiction is not all that different from those either. The recovery looks pretty similar as well, though I've not been to either of those fellowships, but there are a lot of folks who are working on the recovery for sex addiction who are also in those programs, and they say this one really goes a lot deeper and it's a lot harder of a program, and it really looks at not just, a substance or, what is that doing to you, but where did this come from? And it's such a personal thing, since it's it's in you. It's a sexual thing. It's a love thing. So it is treated a little bit differently, but the meetings I go to follow the same principles as other 12-step groups do.
Right. And is it SLAA or SLA? I forget. there's
Yeah,
quite a
sure.
few different ones.
There's
Which
several of them. There's SAA and SLAA. There's SA. There's S and non. There's a bunch of codependency programs that go along with the S programs as well. There's couples in recovery. There are really quite a few that fit under kind of the S flag.
Right. Okay. Well, we'll cover that a little bit as we move along. Now, on a daily basis, how do you maintain your spiritual condition, that conscious contact with a higher power?
That is key. That was really the turning point for me in the program. I went in at one point and really failed miserably because I thought I could do it without that element. And maybe some folks can, I certainly can't. And so for me, that really means, not just a prayer in the morning and a prayer at night, but a constant conversation kind of all throughout the day.
Right.
But I do start my day, with a prayer and showing gratitude and asking for guidance. And then I do a period of meditation before I get up and out of bed. I hear a lot in meetings as far as spirituality goes as well, and kind of always picking up different tidbits there. And I really struggled because of kind of the past that I have with the actual understanding of God and what that has meant in my past. And so I kind of had to come up with my own higher power. And once I did and kind of realized, it can be defined in any way you'd like it, then it's made it a lot easier where I'm not feeling like I'm under the eye of shame or disgrace or judgment, but an all-loving, all-accepting type of thing where it's really more like a partnership.
Absolutely. Beautiful. And I feel exactly the same way. I was brought up as a Jehovah's Witness. So I had a lot of resistance to any form of spirituality because I combined spirituality with religion. So I was very resistant to anything that revolved around the term God or even the higher power concept. So once it became clear to me that I could come up with the understanding, the power greater than me of my own understanding, then it became a lot easier for me to adopt that philosophy. So I am right there with you. And Jace, tell us, how much clean time, how much sobriety time do you have, and when is your anniversary date?
My anniversary is February 2nd of 2015, so I have just over 10 months of sobriety under my belt.
Excellent. And, oh man, my next question is, how old were you the first time you drank and used drugs? But that doesn't really...
I know, and say I don't have a very exciting story there, I'm afraid.
All right.
Like I took one shot in high school this one time. It was gross. Not to say I haven't struggled with alcohol or other things as I've gotten older. I certainly have. But yes, that's not my jam, if you will.
Right, absolutely. Okay, so then we're just going to jump into your story, Jace. Here's what we're going to do. You're going to tell us about the battle against sex addiction, the wreckage it caused in your life, when you hit rock bottom, and finally your journey into recovery up until today. So I'm going to allow you to just take it away.
Okay, that's terrifying. Good.
I'm right there with you.
No, it's such a long story, and it's a hard one. Because it's not like, with alcohol where you could point to, I was 7 when I had my first drink, and here is how alcohol's been involved in my life. I don't have that, and I think a lot of sex addicts don't have that, which makes this a very difficult thing to pinpoint and then to also deal with. And so for me, it really began when I was really young. I was like a child, elementary school, and it really started for me with compulsive masturbation and then that just led to a lot of shame growing up in a more religious family. And the more shame I felt, the more I would turn to this fantasy world I was living in. And the more I was there, the further I was disconnected from my family and my friends, which would, make me feel bad, which it's this sick cycle that I think a lot of people understand really well, a really hidden life and a hidden part of me, and something that even now people are like, wait, what? I'm sorry, how long, was this addiction going on? And wait, you're a what? And, it's people struggle because it was so hidden. And I lived this double life for pretty much my entire life. And there's a misconception with sex addiction that it just has to do with sex, or, you'll just have sex with anyone, or you have sex all the time. That's really not accurate. It has so many different facets to it. It's really a spectrum of different things. And so for me, I didn't really have sex until I was almost 19. But I did just about everything else up until that point. And, it was the religious thing. And I kind of thought, well, I'm not having sex, and that's what the Bible talks about. So, loophole, totally nailed it. But part of me understood that that wasn't the case, and there's always the shame there as well. So, starting with lies and manipulation at a very young age, and compulsive masturbation as well, moving into, even middle school, there are maybe a handful of guys I've dated that I've not cheated on. And I know straight away that makes me sound like a really terrible person. And I got a lot of that. So hold your judgment till the end. There's a whole lot of terrible person in there.
No judgment here.
It was really like for me, it had so little to do with the physical component of it and so much more to do with the power and control I gained from that and getting that upper hand where I wasn't in a position to be vulnerable. And I didn't realize that until being in recovery and really looking back on my actions and the why behind them and what I was feeling during the time. And the same thing that keeps popping up for me is that being out of control was just terrifying for me. And I haven't really figured out why yet. And I know the statistics that go along with addiction in general, but especially sex addiction. They show 97% of sex addicts were emotionally abused. It's like something like 71 or 72% were sexually abused, and then it's 71% were physically abused. So the numbers for abuse are really, really high. There's a lot of trauma in sex addicts and addicts in general, I imagine, and so I certainly understand that might be an element of my past that I am not yet aware of.
Right.
But, or maybe it's a personality thing. Maybe it's a past life thing. I mean, I don't know.
Maybe it's just an addict thing.
It could be just an addict thing. I mean, yeah, we have so much in common in general, just that need to be in control and to not be taken advantage of and to know what was coming at all times and to control that. And even more than, sleeping around or cheating on people or anything like that. I tried to control other people around me, that's the real terrible person I see inside. Trying to change them, manipulate them, say anything I could to have my environment be exactly how I wanted it to be. And of course, I ended up looking like a mini dictator when in actuality, I was just so scared all the time. And so, getting into high school was kind of, just a blur of the same story over and over. Date a guy, get really uncomfortable there or start the lying, start the cheating. There was a sense of entitlement that always went along with it, that I was above the rules for whatever reason. Mm-hmm. A lot of justification in my behavior on why what I was doing was not cheating or was okay or what have you. My real active addiction started in college. I slept with my first college boyfriend just before college started, and we both came from really religious backgrounds, so there was so much shame right from the very beginning and a lot of guilt, and I was just convinced, I was this disgusting person and God was going to hate me forever, and it kind of was like, well, that's that. And so that was a very confusing time as well, him being my first, that being such a big deal to me. And then in an ultimate play of irony, he cheated on me with someone else and lied about it for over a year. Had unprotected sex and then just came and brought that right back to me. All of these things that were really upsetting and really confusing more than anything, in that what I thought to be this very loving act that was something so significant to me, that was special between he and I, he could just so easily go do in the backseat of someone's car. And so it kind of broke my brain around sex. And I had watched people in my family grow up with alcoholism. So I knew, okay, can't do the drinking thing, can't turn to that. I kind of know where that road leads. And, I grew up with the just say no generation and I bought into it. Okay, I can't do drugs. I know where that leads. But here's this other thing that makes me feel better or even just numb, which is sometimes okay too. And so I thought, oh, here's another loophole. Fantastic, because you can't become addicted to sexual behavior. That'd be crazy. This is a normal human thing. In fact, it's darn near healthy. And it kind of started slow. but it did not take long to really rev up. And it got to a point where I just didn't have any self-worth. And without the religious aspect behind it, I didn't really have any reason to say no either. And so it just kind of became part of me. The more it went on, the worse I felt. And again, we're back in that shame spiral and that cycle. And it got to the point, and it's not just sex, it was constantly lying. It was putting that as a top priority in my life over family, over friends, and even just to like have intrigue with a guy at a party. I would completely throw all of my friends and loved ones under the bus just for that potential hit I might get off of that interaction. Of course, people can only put up with that for so long. And I had some really wonderful people in my life who really stuck it out with me for a long time. And of course, nobody at any point said, "Hey, Jace, I think you might be a sex addict," because that's not really a term that a lot of us know. And it's not something that's taken particularly seriously yet. And so, if I was drinking every weekend, which for a while there I was, because that, of course, behavior that is completely unacceptable sober, all of a sudden becomes a crazy Friday night if alcohol's involved. And then people are like, "Oh, dang, girl, that's a crazy night." And I'm like, right? Oh, okay, this behavior is immediately acceptable as long as there's alcohol involved.
Right.
So I'll just drink more and make sure everyone around me is drinking more. And so I would throw parties, 2-3 times a week, just trying to always keep this like happy jive, like fun feeling around. So that way no one would actually see what was really going on, for one. A lot of it was just keeping up appearances, seeming perfect. I did really well in school. I played every sport. I was in book club, chess club, drama club. Like I did all of the things. I'm, kind of like a regular, just everyday nerd. Nobody thought, "Man, you know what? I bet that girl's a sex addict." They probably thought, "Man, I bet that girl's super boring."
I'll be honest with you. I have never, and I'm 45 years old. I've never been in a party and gone, "Boy, I think that person's a sex addict." Like,
no, yeah.
Ever. Like, how do you identify it?
Exactly. And especially because so much of it is done in secret, and that's part of our culture as well. There's a lot of stigma around sexuality in general, especially with women. And sex just isn't something we talk about comfortably, even with our partners a lot of the time. It's such a weird dichotomy that we have in this culture where we're, sex is in our face all the time through, TV or marketing or whatever it might be, but we don't talk about it. Right. And you better not do it if you're a girl. And so it's a weird culture to live in with all of this. My porn addiction, which really revved up in high school and just took flight in college. But a good example while I'm thinking about that is my freshman year of college and most of college. I worked 2 jobs in addition to going to school full time. And so I would go to my morning job and leave and then go home just to watch porn and masturbate, and oftentimes miss class or miss my next job because I just couldn't stop. And like, I don't know if you've ever watched like 6 to 8 hours of porn at a time, but it does something to your brain. That's not a place you want to be in.
Because I'm married, I'm going to decline to answer that question.
I didn't even ask the question. You see how you are? I don't recommend it. It's things like missing family events, to sleep with a stranger, someone I didn't care about or even have any interest in. And that's when it really started turning into something really scary, is that I was putting myself in a lot of really dangerous interactions with people I did not know, without using protection, sometimes going to their homes, in their cars, people I'd never met before, meeting people online and having them over to my home, not even talking on the phone or texting, sleeping with people in public, sleeping, with, one of the top, first 10 people I slept with was the brother of an ex of mine, just was always lying to the family, all this stuff, just to get that fix and just feel that sense of control and power and self-worth.
Yes.
A lot of it was coming from that, and that, if I can get someone to do X, Y, and Z, especially if it's against their own integrity, then that must mean I'm worth so much. And that's, a lot of where the manipulation was, is just trying to get value. And the funny thing is, I was having sex with more people to try to feel valuable, but the more sex you have with strange people, the less valuable you feel.
Correct. Yes.
So I did not plan that out well. I'll admit it now. It wasn't a great plan.
In addiction and the behaviors that happen during addiction, there's steps where it just gets worse. And as you go into one type of behavior, or for example, us as drug addicts, you may smoke weed and feel guilty about smoking weed, but then smoking weed's not that big of a deal. And then you do a little ecstasy and you don't think that's such a big deal anymore. And then before you know it, the things you thought you'd never do, you're doing. And the snowball effect of guilt, shame, and remorse just seems to catapult you into even worse types of behavior. So I'm assuming it's the same with the sex addiction.
Absolutely. And on top of that, it's also progressive. Just like any other addiction is, where, someone, kind of like you were saying, might start off with alcohol or weed or, mushrooms, something like that. And then before you know it, maybe they're down the line, it's heroin, it's meth, it's something, it's gone further. Or the person who has a drink at dinner at night, all of a sudden now they're having a drink at lunch during work, and okay, now I need one to start my day. It was kind of like that in the sense of a lot of cyber sex as well. So being at work and just needing like a little pick-me-up. So going online and seeking someone out, which is so easy nowadays. Hell, they make apps for it. And so even, when people ask me a lot, well, I watch porn or I have sex, how many people do you have to have sex with to be a sex addict? Or, well, how much porn do you have to watch? And it's like, well, it's not really defined that way. However, are you watching porn at work? Are you masturbating in an office that has windows and no door? Yes, I was. Like, okay, now we're looking at a problem, if that makes sense as a differential.
No, absolutely, it makes sense. And just to preserve anonymity, I have a few friends of mine, one in particular who goes to our fellowship because there isn't an active SLAA or SA meeting. We're here in Costa Rica, and for Costa Rica, being an alcoholic is enough of a taboo. In the States, it's not, but over here, it's even that's enough of a stigma. So now you start to participate, say for example, in a sex and love addicts meeting, and it gets found out in the community, and then over here there is absolutely no information about what sex addiction is. So all of a sudden people are jumping to conclusions as to what that represents. But I remember him telling me about these apps. I don't even have any idea what he's talking about, but you just mentioned some apps. I guess there's hookup apps on your phone where you can hook up with people like within a mile or 2 mile radius of yourself. And there's just people that are making themselves available. And of course you're making yourself available. So it's like that quick fix that you're talking about. Now it's on your phone. Now it's an app. Now it's within a 10-mile radius, so to speak. And so, and he also talks about, going on a 12-hour porn benders, right? And that kind of a thing where, your eyes are just like about to pop out of your head and you can't stop. You can't stop and you miss work and you're doing. So as you're discussing it, I'm resonating with it only because because I'm in these meetings, they'll come and say, hey, listen, I want to talk to you about this thing, I feel safe discussing it with you, which is 100%. It's all, I would never divulge anybody's, anonymity or never discuss someone's anonymity. But at the same time, I'm relating to you in that sense because, the listeners that are listening right now, a few of them in the email had talked about specifically the porn addiction. That it's years and years of porn addiction because it's so easy, it's free, it's accessible. I mean, all you need is an internet connection, a computer, and you're off to the races. So, yep. so it's so easy and it's so private that, and unless somebody says, man, are you getting any sleep? It doesn't look like, you're getting any sleep at home. You look completely exhausted, right? Because they're not smelling any alcohol or any drugs because you're not using,
Absolutely.
But you've got this look of being drained, of being void of something, I'm assuming that's the case.
Yeah, that definitely was in my case. And all of this is so easy to disguise. Oh, you look really tired. Yeah, I'm just having a hard time sleeping. I'm really stressed. Oh, at work, at school, or, oh yeah, I'm just, I don't know, maybe too much caffeine. Yeah, I'm just having a tough time sleeping these days, but I'm fine. And people go, okay, and they move on. Or, a lot of it too, I went to a few different therapists during college and as an adult as well. And it was always something different. Oh, you're bipolar. You have anxiety disorder. You're manic. All these different things. And what I've realized is, yeah, it looks a whole lot like being bipolar, being high, and going through withdrawals. And, yeah, I did go through periods of depression. I was super isolated. I hated myself. Plenty of people around me hated me and made that very clear. I couldn't talk to anyone. I was lying all the time. Literally everything that came out of my mouth pretty much was a lie. I couldn't connect with my family. I was very mean to a lot of people. And so, yeah, of course I went into some pretty dark periods of depression in my life. But nobody saw the underlying cause. But I sure wasn't telling anyone about it either.
Right.
But in addition to this being such a quiet thing as far as just society goes, it's actually not that discussed in the mental health field yet either. And that's changing. It certainly is. And there's definitely more training going on so that it can be recognized in the way that other addictions have been in the past and are becoming more and more connected with that field. I just kept getting misdiagnosed, and I always thought, like, that just doesn't seem quite right. And sure enough, being bipolar doesn't go away just magically, and I don't feel that way anymore. No one would characterize me that way anymore. And now I realize it was just all the addiction.
Right. I had a friend of mine recently who had told me, because he found out that I was going to meetings and I was a drug addict. And he had told me that he had battled with sex addiction. And so I said, oh, really? And he said, yeah. I go, I'd love to have you on the show. I'd love to hear about it, right? And he goes, all right, let me think about it. And for me, it was because of how I've been lately as far as not being anonymous and as far as being open about my being an addict. And the stigma behind being an addict is no longer what it used to be. But he said, let's say, for example, you're a school teacher and
Yep.
you tell somebody that you're an alcoholic and that you're in recovery, and you're probably going to get a pat on the back. Oh, wow, how much time you got? Oh, I got about 10 years. You tell them that you're a sex addict and you're going to be teaching their kids,
They hear sex offender.
Yeah. They start thinking pedophile. They start thinking molestation. There's no pat on the back. There is, how do we get rid of this guy?
Absolutely. And it's a really, really sad element with sex addiction. And, if you're on the male side, you are a pedophile, you're a sex offender, you're a pervert. If you're on the female side, you're a slut, you're a whore. There's not that connection yet with this being a legitimate addiction. But I feel hopeful in that in the beginning years of AA, nobody was patting anybody on the back. There's a huge stigma around being an alcoholic,
yes,
especially being a female alcoholic. Now, we move up a few years to NA. Nobody was excited to have a heroin addict around them. That went on for a long time.
Yeah.
And so, though I know it's scary right now, I really believe that the more education we get out there about sex addiction and the more people standing up and being like, hey, you notice how I'm your neighbor and I'm just like a normal human? I'm also a sex addict in recovery, and here's what that looks like for me. And it's the catch-22 in that this is going to be stigmatized as long as we stay quiet. But so many stay quiet because of how stigmatized it is. And there is a lot at stake for some people, just like you were saying with the school teacher or other members of the community. Or I worked a job where I worked with 30 guys. I was the only female, and two of my employees were in recovery for heroin addiction. And just like you said, everybody said, "Good job, man! All right." And how long are you clean? That's so great. What do you think would have happened if I would have told them, "Hey, 30 guys, I'm actually in recovery too, and I have a couple months of sobriety, and I'm going to recovery for sex addiction."
They'd form a line.
I would get all kinds of harassment.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, you're absolutely right. It's looked at totally differently.
Yes.
And I actually hear this a lot. I get it on my blog. I get it on my YouTube series, on any of my web pages, where people go like, "Oh, so you like to have sex? What's wrong with that?" And they don't understand what it means. And you have the media who shows it as either an excuse for bad behavior from people in power or a joke. And people don't see the pain and the trauma that's involved. And, we talk about, alcohol putting a substance in your body, or drugs, injecting a substance in your body. With sex addiction, you are also putting things in your body in the worst possible way, in the most intimate, private way.
Yeah.
And there's so much pain that goes into that, demoralizing yourself. And it's not this exciting world of, loud music and sex parties and attractive people running around naked. I've been to sex parties. It is not a lot of attractive people naked. Let me tell you that. It's mostly old people naked.
Yeah.
And I stayed.
Ooh.
Yeah. Welcome to my life, Omar.
Yeah. Right.
I really don't think that we're in a society of hateful people. I think we're in a society of people who have not yet had the opportunity to be educated on this yet.
Yes.
And I really think it will take time. And sex addiction is really something that's just started coming out in a more serious way in the media in the last few years, and only really seriously in the last few months, with it really popping up in mainstream media and having people say, "Hey, hold on. This is not a joke. This is a real thing, and here's how it destroyed my life." And what I hear a lot is, "Wait, is that a real thing?"
Yeah. Makes sense. Makes sense.
So it is scary, and it is hard for people to get information, and it's really hard for people to get help, because just as much as we're stigmatized as being addicts, for sex addiction, you're just as stigmatized for getting recovery.
Yeah. Well, you know what? I want to talk a little bit more about your project and what you've got moving forward. But I want to go back 10 months, 11 months, 12 months, if we can. Okay.
Yeah.
There's 2 months leading up to your sobriety date. Tell us, what was that rock bottom issue, behavior, moments that ultimately brought you to, surrender and then come into recovery?
Well, I actually started recovery in June of 2014, though I clearly did not get sober right away. And that happened because in May of 2014, I finally got to a point where I was completely isolated from everyone in my life. I hardly talked to my family anymore. I had very few friends from my hometown. I had moved to Austin by this point. There were people here in Austin that were trying to become my friend, and I knew if they did, I was just going to destroy their lives, just like I had everybody else, because I didn't know how to not do that.
Right.
And I just assumed that I was this terrible, disgusting person who destroyed everything I touched. And so I kept everyone away. And I didn't know what was wrong, but I knew that I hated myself. I knew I was miserable. I knew everyone I was around was miserable. And I thought to myself, I can't do this as my life. We're humans. We need connection. And I'm not someone who can make connections with people. And I'm not someone who deserves connections with people. And I can't do it. And so I started planning my suicide at that time. And it wasn't this, big dramatic scene. It was just, it seemed very logical to me that was the next best thing to do. And so I started putting action in place to commit suicide. And I don't know what it was, but I just had this little voice pop up in my head that said, well, hold on a second. There was this time in that where I just wanted to go out and act out with people, but I didn't have it in me anymore to go and find people to have sex with and seek that comfort. I just didn't have it anymore. But I knew that there was some connection there that, I just had this little voice. I was like, wait up. You were doing that and you were feeling better. Why is that? Oh, well, because sex releases chemicals in your brain. Wait a second. That sounds a whole lot like drugs. I wonder if you can have problems with sex the way people have problem with drugs. So I went and typed something along the lines of, can sex, is sex-related drugs or, something like that, can it become addictive? And boy, did Google deliver. And so many things came up. And just page after page after page of people telling stories very similar to what I had always felt, and things finally making sense. And I thought, oh my God, this is me in a lifetime of being on the outside and never fitting in anywhere and having nothing make sense and having even the things professionals were telling me not helping and not making sense. This finally explains it. And so I thought, all right, hold on. You can kill yourself next week. Go to one of these meetings and see what it's about. And so I made a promise to myself that I would go check it out. And I did. And I stood at the door and I thought, oh, gross. I'm going to walk into this dank room with a bunch of greasy guys in trench coats. And, it was like going to be like a sex toy warehouse at like 2:00 in the morning with like really skeevy people. And I thought, oh, what am I doing here? I don't belong here. And then I opened the door because I was like, do it, get in there. And, I opened the door and instead I'm greeted by these lovely people who look like me, who look like you. They're just regular people. And they welcomed me in and, I was very uncomfortable. As anyone who's walked into that time can tell you. And they started talking, and within a few minutes, I was just sobbing because even just being in that room, I felt like I was home after not having a home for so long. I felt like I was home, and we had a check-in, and I talked to them. They explained things to me, and I thought, this is it. This is it. My life can be something. It can change. I can change. Maybe I'm not this disgusting, terrible person. Maybe I just have this terrible problem. And maybe it can be different. And I can be like these people. And so I got the book. I got every pamphlet. I got my one-day chip. I got all of these things. And I'm like, I'm going to do it. I'm going to do all 12 steps in, a couple of months. And I'm going to nail it. I'm going to be the best recovering addict ever. Does this sound familiar? Maybe you've heard this story before.
Maybe I've made that statement.
You made the statement, yeah. And I'm like, I'm going to be the best. I'm going to show these people I will rule this program, and I'm going to do it my way because I'm different, and it's got to be on my terms. And what's this God stuff? No, I already went there. I know where that's a bunch of hypocrites and hateful people. No, thank you. I'll do it the Jace way. And that did not work. Spoiler alert. That I fell on my face before you know it. I was very overwhelmed because you can't take all of that on. And I was very much a compulsive person. I know that's a weird trait to me specifically. It's not a common one out there
No.
amongst the addicts. I was a very compulsive person, and I was very 0 to 10. And so I was in or I was out. And so I was in, and I was at a 10, and you can't live at a 10. And so I broke, and it was too much at once, and it was scary, and I was lost. And because I was going to do it my way is always the lone wolf way. I was going to meetings, and I was listening all stuff, but, I wasn't really connecting with people because I didn't know how to do that. And so I became very scared and overwhelmed, and I became lost. And all of a sudden, I get that text on my phone of that one guy who I've been wanting to, be with for, just this one last time, this one more thing, and then I'll recover. And then that turned into me just absolutely humiliating myself. And then I was too embarrassed to keep going to meetings, but I still did. And I wasn't involved in the way I should be. I still wasn't getting through those first 3 steps. And then I'm right back to shame. And so I went right back to Craigslist or I went to websites where you can meet people randomly, and just started getting back out there. But I thought, okay, I know what's wrong. I've identified the problem. I've made some effort to change. I'm having sex with protection now, which is better. So I must be fine. I got this. And that went okay for a while. It's not like every experience is terrible or scary or, I've met a lot of really nice people, a lot of really good people. And I've had some very positive experiences and very warm experiences, and some, out of my comfort zone that really pushed me to grow. And there is a lot of pain there, but it's not all, horrifying all the time. There are nice people out there, and I happen to find some of them. And so it kind of started that way. And then before you know it, I'm blackout drunk in a bathroom at my boss's apartment building, having unprotected sex with a stranger. And a mean stranger too. Someone who had been super mean to me the whole night. Cliche, I know. But it freaked me out because I'm like, how am I back here so fast? Yeah. I was doing better. I'm in recovery. I'm doing all these things. And it just terrified me. And then also the other side of it was that I'd kind of come out of this daze that I'd been in and realized, oh, STDs exist. Mm-hmm. And I am not immune to them. And so then I started freaking out. Oh, my God, I have everything. I know it. I have every STD. I can feel it. And
sounds like me in college.
Oh, my God, I freaked out. And so on top of that, one day I'm at a meeting at work, and I get a picture of a lady's very private areas. And I think, why is a strange phone number texting me? Oh my God, that's me.
Oh.
Yeah. And I certainly did not pose for those or remember that. I'm seeing that I'd never left a paper trail before. I don't think I posed for those, but, and then I get other photos and was just so humiliated. But then my addict brain goes, you know how to repair this solution? Meet up with that guy again, win him over, make sure you're in his good graces so that way those photos don't go anywhere else. So this mean strange person that you slept with randomly, unprotected, who took photos of you without asking you and is now randomly texting them to you along with some very disgusting terminology, you should sleep with that guy again. And it was this few-week period of this back and forth on him just straight up telling me, he'd blow me off when we were supposed to meet, and he'd be like, that's just because I just don't care about you. You're not a priority. I just don't care. Why would you want to sleep with that person? Why would you want to share that most intimate, special part of yourself with someone who says those things directly to you? Because of the photos, of course. I had a plan of action. There was a purpose. Either way, we end up meeting on February 1st, Super Bowl Sunday. It was after the game. And I was not drunk. I was within my solid mind, and he kept pushing to drop the condom, and I fought for a while, and then finally I just gave up and just allowed it. And it wasn't like this smoking hot, steamy scene where passion was in the works. It was boring, actually, and not enjoyable, and there was no connection there at all. And I was still putting myself in all of this danger. Why? And the next day, woke up just awake that this was a real problem and that I was not immune. I was not different. I was not above it all. And that I couldn't do it the Jace way, because the Jace way sucked and failed. And I went to a meeting that next day, and I haven't turned back since.
That's heavy. That's the textbook definition of a rock hard bottom.
It did not feel good. And it's photographed.
Did you ever get the photos back?
No. What was I going to do? Have someone in the room too and then delete him from his phone? Like, I don't know what the plan was there. The plan was to manipulate him under my control so that way he would be in a sense where he couldn't disrupt it and then would never send them out.
Yeah, I'm thinking you drop it in the toilet or you steal it.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
It's all cloud-based now.
They're
out there somewhere. Oh, man, I don't. But at the same time, I don't care. There's a lot of evidence of me being a shitty person out there. I'm not that person anymore. And if someone goes, oh, man, I saw these photos of you, I'm going to be like, I'm really sorry. Those were not flattering. Moving on with my day. That's not who I am. And it's something I'm learning from and growing from. I can't feel shame about it anymore. Right. I don't like it. It's not great. But at the same time, it put me in recovery. And honestly, I don't think I could ever have gotten to this level of just pure joy and happiness and self-love if I didn't go into recovery. And so if it took the rest of my life being in pain and being depressed or self-loathing, I certainly would not wish the treatment I put on other people on them again. But as far as I go, I will take all of that. I will take some dude telling me, you don't matter to me. I will take that every day if that meant finding my way into this program and the person I get to be now and the perspective I get to wake up with every morning now.
It's amazing. It's absolutely amazing. And I'm so glad we did this interview because it absolutely puts a new light on this sex addiction, because as you're telling your story, you could have replaced the sex addiction with drug addiction or alcoholism, because all of the terminology that you used, all the feelings that you had, the bottom that you experienced, the thoughts of suicide, everything that you described is no different than a drug addict and alcoholic sharing their story of absolute misery and disgust. Thank you. Thank you for coming on here and telling us and explaining to us exactly what sex addiction is all about.
Well, that's my addiction. Everybody have to speak on their own. But and the other side of it too, you had mentioned a friend of yours in a different meeting came up and said, hey, I'm struggling with all these other things. That's actually been the most common reaction I've gotten as I've begun to talk to people in other programs and in other organizations, and a lot of people that are focusing on the substance use. When I come in and say, hey, I really am interested in the work you guys are doing. We could really use that over here on my side. And they say, your side, what's that? And I tell them, and they look around and they say, I got a couple of questions about that. That sounds a lot like me. And I think this is a much bigger addiction than what we've been talking about so far. And I think having that crossover like you and I are doing right now, everyone on the substance use side of these programs that have been around for a lot longer, there's a lot more sobriety there. They have so much to offer, those of us over here. And this isn't a new program, mind you. This is, began in the 80s. Like, this is not a new program. It's just getting bigger and getting more out there. But, and then there's a lot that we do on this side and that we struggle with on this side that could really be helpful to people who are maybe connecting with that on the other side as well. So I think the more we all talk and the more we help one another, the better we're all going to get.
Being that you're 10 months in sobriety, How long did it take before you started this project that you have? What's the name of it?
The film is called Suddenly Celibate. It started on February 2nd, 2015. The moment I became suddenly celibate, the film actually started developing on my way home from that Monday night meeting.
That's spectacular. So you literally walked in, picked up a white chip, one day chip, left and said, I'm starting a movie. Suddenly Celibate.
Kind of. And the name didn't come up right away, and what the film was didn't come up right away, but I just felt this underlying sense of purpose. And I thought, I mean, my career field is in documentary film, and my degree is in film. I've worked in film and TV since college, since my freshman year of college. And so my background is in that. And, I always have people, when are you going to make your first film? All stuff. And I'm like, it takes so much work and so much dedication to make a documentary film. And I've never cared enough about anything, well, except sex. So all of a sudden, I thought, whoa, wait a minute. I've been asking all of these people these different things, and I've realized as I woke up and I really started coming into recovery, I had so many misconceptions about sex. And I had so many gaps in my sex education and just my understanding of healthy sexuality in general. So I started asking people, and I realized, a lot of people have huge gaps, and a lot of people have misconceptions about healthy relationships and sexuality. We should learn about this. And so that's, when the film really started developing into what it is now, which is my journey into this world of healthy sexuality and talking to, sexperts, doctors, psychologists, relationship experts, people in the fetish communities, polyamory. If it has to do with sex or relationships, me and my crew are out there. We are talking to them. We're doing the awkward stuff. I'm asking so many embarrassing questions. I'm bright red half the time. But it's important information. It's a world we all live in, and we probably would be better off if we're doing it in a healthy way and taking care of ourselves and our partners. And so I stopped having sex, and I really started learning about it. And that's what we're doing over here. We've got, of course, the website Suddenly Celibate, which acts as a kind of a hub for information as well. The site is broken up into different areas. There's a whole bit on sex addiction, sex education, geared towards adults, and relationships as well, which really just is a culmination of brilliant minds from across the world. And if I find anything useful, helpful, entertaining, shocking, whatever it's going to be, I put it up on the site, and I have attached trigger alerts to anything that's clearly explicit or could potentially really trigger someone with the photos on the website or whatever it would be. That way, we as sex addicts can actually go somewhere and get information surrounding sex that isn't sexual, if that makes sense.
Absolutely.
Of course, there's information about the film on there as well, and a little bit about my story. There's dozens of videos, all from the world of sex and relationships and addiction as well.
And so are you also on all the typical social media, Facebook, Twitter? Are you on that?
I am on all of them. I'm on there, just as Jace Downey. The film Suddenly Celibate is. I am on Twitter at Jace Sex Addict. My YouTube channel is called Suddenly Celibate as well. We're putting all this work. We're in our big fundraising period right now. If anyone out there is wanting to get involved, there's that information on the site also. And I've got a really dedicated, amazing crew working with me as well. I definitely could not do this alone. They're so supportive as a film crew, and also as I go through this journey, which is really hard. I'm putting myself out there. I'm in a world I've never been in before. A lot of it is my personal story, and it's scary.
It looks totally scary. And, the reason why I contacted you in the first place was because of the video that I saw you on where you were promoting the Suddenly Celibate documentary. The video that you posted is what inspired me to contact you. And you look so comfortable doing the video.
Oh, my God. It was raining. Oh, it was freezing.
You could have never, I tell you, I could have never told that you were terrified, that you were freezing.
I had to stand out on a incredibly busy street corner downtown for an hour and 40 minutes that way. It took me like an hour and 15 minutes before I made eye contact with anyone.
Yeah. Were you actually naked?
Yes.
Oh my God. That's fucking wild, dude.
very, very liberal. And so you have to have bottoms. So that was it. But you don't, as a woman, you don't have to wear a top or anything.
That's just, yeah, well.
Yeah, I seriously feel sick.
Okay, we're gonna come off that. Let's just keep moving along here. All right. But seriously, in all seriousness, what I think that's going to happen, or at least what I see happening, that what you're doing, looking back, maybe 5, even less, but within 5 years, it could be just as big and just as well accepted and recognized as a disease and not some sort of moral deficiency. I truly believe that what you're doing is going to have a huge impact moving forward.
Thank you so much. That's so encouraging to hear. Thank you for saying that. I think that you're right. And I know there are other people out there speaking on it as well and writing about it. And there's actually just this week 2 different articles about female porn addicts that came about. And it's going to move a lot faster than it did with alcohol and drugs because the movement's already going, the momentum's there, society's already more comfortable with the word addiction, and they kind of know 12-step and social media, and just we're a different culture than we were before. And that's because of the work that you guys have been doing. So I'm hoping we can kind of ride the wave.
No question about it. What you're doing right now, I am confident that it will significantly remove the stigma behind sex addiction the way so many of us have helped remove the stigma behind alcoholism and more recently drug addiction.
I hope so. I mean, really, I get a lot of comments like, you're so strong, you're so brave, you're so bold, all these things. But like, actually, it is scary being out here alone. And though I get a lot of support, I get a lot of people telling me some less than supportive things as well. And it's still going to be this taboo thing until people realize, oh, this is millions of people. This is regular people. This is people I know. This is people in my family. We need to start paying attention to this and treating these people with some empathy and understanding and not shaming them, because that's not helping anybody. Especially when you're getting into the porn addiction. There is guides out now for treating teen porn addiction and child porn addiction. Yeah. This is a huge crisis. Like, America's got to wake up to this. This shit is real. It is happening. It's in your home. Oh, not my kid. Yes, your kid. Even before I'm a kid before the internet, and I was finding sexual material anywhere I could. As soon as AOL came online, I was on those chat rooms in elementary school. And I was like a good, like, straight A student, mama's girl, Christian, the whole bit. And I was on those. I was fucking fishing people as an elementary student. I was the creepy person in those chat rooms. I don't even know what we talked about, but like, yeah, I was in those chat. What the hell was I doing at 8, 9 years old? Like, yes, it is your kid. It's everyone. And it's just something we got to get over. Like, ew, no, morals. I don't want that. Like, nah, get over it. It's a problem. Let's just start dealing with it. There are solutions out there. There are people who have been working in this field for decades. Just get over the moral part. Get over the gross part. Let's get to the recovery part, because it's so wonderful. And that's really where my motivation came for doing this, is that I almost killed myself because I thought I was alone. And what saved me is realizing that that's just not the case. And so when I started talking to people about doing this, and especially going online with these videos and everything, they all said, yeah, but what about this? What about your reputation? What about, how people are going to treat you? And all of a sudden I thought, man, that's just not a big enough excuse to let someone else out there feel like they're alone.
What a powerful message. Thank you so much, Jace. That's just amazing. And I'm behind you 110%. But let's start closing up here. And the way I like to close up here is for the newcomer. I want to ask you some questions that I typically ask for the newcomers that are just coming in. So first question would be, well, actually, I got to change them up a little bit, because one in particular came to mind. The one that there was 2 comments from the people I got emails from, and they both said they had like severe porn addiction. So, for those people that are suffering with that particular ailment, or I don't even know if you want to say that, because if somebody comes to me and says, hey, I have a problems with just smoking weed, but drinking's not a problem, I've got to tell them, well, unfortunately, you've got to stop it all. But is there anything specific you can tell someone who's new, who's suffering from porn addiction, who's been up for like 3 days and their eyes are about to pop out of their heads? Like, is there something that they can do? What would you say to them?
I would say go to a meeting straight away. I know that seems like a really scary thing, that it's going to be a very shameful thing. You are not alone. Even, I get some of the guys in there kind of like, oh, I'm sorry to have mentioned that in front of you, Jace. And I'm like, I am in this program for a reason. Porn addiction, sex addiction in general, but especially porn addiction, is the fastest growing addiction right now. You're not alone. It's not that shameful. There are so many tools that can help with things from blocking your phone, blocking your computer from going to those websites. There's a lot of organizations out there working specifically to help porn addicts. If you are going to be addicted to any element of the sexual realm, you picked a really good one, because there's a lot of help for porn addiction right now.
Wow. I love it. That's fantastic. And what books would you recommend to newcomers that you read in your early recovery, or you're currently reading?
Oh my gosh, I love to read. So I've read so many, especially when I was so gung-ho in the beginning. A really good one if you're just wanting to learn about sex addiction and recovery, Dr. Patrick Carnes, he has so many phenomenal books. One of his earlier books is called Out of the Shadows, and it really talks about what the addiction is, what it looks like, who's suffering from it, and how we're getting better by it. Robert Weiss also has Sex Addiction 101, a basic guide to addiction and recovery. That's a great one. And my favorite that I've read so far, it's called Women, Sex, and Addiction. It's by Charlotte Davis Castle. And though it does focus more on women in general, it's a really amazing book for anyone to read. It really talks about the connection between all the addictions. It goes into the relationship between adult addiction and early abuse and neglect. And it talks a lot about how we as a culture, and especially women, use sex to escape pain and to really gain a sense of power, and how we can really use it as an expression of our soul. And it can really be a good thing. And so women, sex, and addiction, especially if you're a female out there listening, I know firsthand how confusing all of this is and how there are fewer resources for women. That's a really good place to start.
Wonderful, wonderful. And what is the best suggestion you have ever received?
Oh my goodness, there's so many amazing people that I've come across. But I think what really helped me the most, because it blew my mind, is somebody told me to just sit with my thoughts and feelings. And that never occurred to me before, that I could do that. I thought I always had to act on them instantly. So just sitting with them was shocking, very uncomfortable, and amazingly helpful.
Oh, that's fantastic. Wonderful suggestion. And if you could give a newcomer only one suggestion, what would that be?
Oh my goodness. Aside from that one, which is good advice, I know this is going to sound mean, and I don't mean it to be. And spend 10 minutes with me and you'll know I'm not this mean person I've been telling you all about. But, oh man, I'm sure you're really wonderful, but you're just not as unique as you think you are. You're not unique in your addiction. You're not going to be all that unique in your recovery. And though 12-step doesn't work for everyone, and I wouldn't push it on anyone who it's not working for, there are recovery programs out there that do work for every type of person. And there's a lot of experience and knowledge in those groups. And you're going to save yourself a lot of time if you just give up the idea that you're above it all and that you're different than everyone else. Because you're going to find out eventually that you are not. And you can skip what my sponsor calls field research. Skip the field research and just start listening.
Oh man, there's so many absolute similarities. I'm looking forward to hearing the feedback from our listeners, because I got so much out of this, because it got explained to me the same way I've explained drug addiction and alcoholism to others. So the explanation, the feelings, the emotions, the story behind it, it paints a picture that I had no idea was what was going on behind the scenes of being a sex addict. But addiction is addiction, and it affects each and every one of us in the exact same way. It just completely dehumanizes us, disconnects us from society, disconnects us from a higher power, isolates us, and ultimately wants to kill us. It's all basically the same. So I'm so glad you came on because your story was awesome. Thanks, Jace.
Oh, thank you. And I know we're wrapping up, but I'll say real quick that there are a lot of studies going on now on the brain that are showing sex addiction showing up very similarly to drug addiction. It's reacting in the same parts of the brain in the exact same way. So that's still a science that is emerging right now. But, as you're talking about all the commonalities, it's actually scientifically very common. It's all right there in the limbic system. There's so much that goes on there as far as judgment and decision making and the lack thereof being blocked by all of those other chemicals flooding your brain, and what you need to do to reach that same peak. And whether that's more sex or more extreme sex or more dangerous sex or more violent sex or porn watching as well really progresses. The idea that we are all so different is hurting everyone. And just like you've said, this could have been replaced with drugs or alcohol or even food or gambling, whatever it is. You're right. Addiction is addiction. And I love that we got to talk tonight and that other people are bringing this up with you as well and asking questions. I know I need more support and more education and more knowledge and more research and more, and I know that other people are out there that are the same way. So the more we drop these walls that we're different and we all need to be separate, the better, I say.
Amen. All right. Well, Jace, again, thank you so much, folks. Be sure to check out Suddenly Celibate. I'm assuming it's suddenlycelibate.com.
It is indeed.
Okay, wonderful. We've now reached the end of our show. Thanks for joining us. And as we say here in Costa Rica, pura vida.
Pura vida.
Thank you for joining us on the Share Recovery Podcast. To check out the show notes page on this interview or to thank our guests for sharing their story, go to www.thesharepodcast.com. While you're on the website, don't forget to sign up for our free newsletter to stay up to date on the latest news, podcasts, and interviews. Want to be one of our guests and share your story? Then go to our website and click on the Share Your Story button. We share our inspiring recovery stories every Tuesday, so subscribe to our show on iTunes or Stitcher Radio to get your free weekly download. We'll see you then. The opinions shared on this show reflect those of the individual speaker and not of any 12-Step Fellowship as a whole. And though we discuss 12-Step recovery and the impact it had in our lives, we do not promote or endorse any 12-Step Anonymous program.